Attila is the 10th most common male name in Hungary. It's less common than it was in the 60s when it was the 6th most common, but if you know a Hungarian, there's a strong chance they know at least a few Attilas. And even cultureless Hungarian Americans like myself have Attilas in their family. The name is popular in places like Turkey and Bulgaria as well, but its preponderance in Hungary is quite an interesting story. So the first person that most people think of when they think of the name Attila is Attila the Hun, the guy who led a bunch of nomadic warriors from Asia into Europe in the 400s. And it's probably an oversimplification to say that's why the Roman Empire fell, but it was definitely one of the biggest nails in the coffin. Hungarians were also nomads who came from Asia into Europe, but in the 900s, and as such, they and some of the surrounding people see sort of a historical continuity with Attila's Huns. So even though they're not technically related or spoke the same language, there's this cultural affinity with many Hungarians retconning Attila's Huns as being sort of like ancestors. So this is where the name comes from, right? Actually, the name Attila, while used, was extremely rare to non-existent in Hungary until the middle of the 20th century. And you may think the revival of a pagan leader's name in the modern era, that's probably like a right-wing nationalist thing, right? Again, not necessarily, because one of the earliest prominent Hungarian figures with the name Attila was actually this guy, considered a left-wing hero in Hungary and the country's great proletarian poet. This is Attila József, and in addition to being mustache goals, he was the biggest figure to kick off the mid-century wave of Attilas. Attila József was a really classic troubled genius. He was a member of the illegal Communist Party in the 1930s, and much of his poetry was about the beauty in the lives of the working class. But he was also diagnosed with schizophrenia and institutionalized at various points. In 1936, he was kicked out of the Communist Party because of his interest in Freud, and in 1937, he committed suicide by throwing himself in front of a train. Even still, his memory was uplifted in the communist era. Streets named after him are the 9th most common street in all of Hungary. Attila was such an uncommon name in Hungary at the time that he was young, his foster parents even called him Pista or Stevie, claiming that Attila wasn't a real name. So, is every Attila in Hungary named after Attila the Hun or Attila József? Definitely not. At this point, it's just a general Hungarian name, but you can definitely see the history of the country of Hungary as a whole, sort of, in the history of its popularity, from antiquity all the way to modernity. Plus, it just sounds really cool, right? I think it's really hardcore. Do you know a name more metal than Attila?